Good morning, everybody. My name's Denise Hill and I am Head of Engagement at Visit Scotland. And along with my colleague Chris Greenwood, our Insights Manager, we're delighted today to be meeting with you on the topic of planning. And in particular, the use of scenario planning as a tool to help businesses to plan their way out through the next steps, out through the challenges presented by the COVID pandemic. Many of you will already be familiar, I'm sure, with our VisitScotland.org hub for the website, our website for industry, where we share lots of different resources for tourism businesses. And at this time, that of course is including data and insights relating to the COVID pandemic, how that's impacting on global tourism. Certainly how that's impacting on our key markets, and not least how that is impacting on Scotland and our own destination. There are recorded presentations on topics like the profile of those visitor groups first to return, we believe, and things like sharing best practice and examples of how businesses are adapting to meet these challenges and these opportunities. The scenario planning toolkit, which we will be discussing this morning, I think we've got a slide with an image there of the front cover on that. Some of you may have seen this already. It's one of the further resources that we have posted up onto VisitScotland.org, and we published that there at the back end of last year as a resource, again, to support businesses, and it's there for everybody, available to everyone who wants to download that and have a shot at working through that. The genesis, where did it come from? Well, really this came about as part of a discussion with the STERG group, the Scottish Tourism Emergency Response Group, who are working together to address the challenges of COVID on Scottish tourism. They had asked us at Visit Scotland, and Chris responded with an excellent piece of work on looking at the scenarios that may yet come about as we progress through the various stages of COVID. But having started off being, Chris won't mind me saying, perhaps a more academic exercise, we very quickly thought, you know, we need this to be something that is also very practical and usable and accessible for businesses to be able to make use of that, and thus the idea of the toolkit was born. We wanted to put that up on .org, but before we did that, we wanted the input of industry, and to make sure that we got input into the creation of this toolkit, we then approached various different heads of sector groups, and I'm delighted to say Gordon Morrison from ASVA was incredibly helpful in pulling together a group of people to from his sector, from the visitor attractions and experiences sector, to look at the work that we were doing, input into that, and help us to make it as useful as it could hopefully be. So road testing it with that group of people was incredibly helpful. I'll leave Gordon to say a wee bit more about that perhaps, but it certainly allowed us then to gather together a whole lot of very sector specific thoughts and ideas from that group, to allow us to create then this further resource today, our presentation on this topic specifically for you guys in the visitor attractions sector. There's a heap of excellent work has already been done, not least with Gordon and ASVA and the members there, on looking at the impact of COVID on the sector, the issues, the challenges, the gaps where support is needed, and some lobbying being done there as well. Today's presentation is about looking forward, and it's about planning at a time when we cannot yet be sure of the various scenarios that we're going to be facing, and that's incredibly difficult, but it is critical to us emerging through restart and recovery of the industry. We don't have all the answers, I'll say first and foremost, but what we do have is work done with a group of your peers to gather together their thoughts, their ideas on the back of this scenario planning concept. Their ideas and thoughts may not fit exactly onto your own business model and your experiences, but we do hope nonetheless that what we share today will be a really useful starter for all the businesses in the sector, considering how scenarios are going to be facing us, or which scenarios are going to be facing us, and looking at the toolkit as a possible resource to help them work through that. Now, today we have allowed some time towards the back end of the hour for questions and answers, but please do feel free to use the questions button here on the screen if you have any thoughts or questions and contributions as we work our way through the presentation in this hour. So just before I hand over to Chris Greenwood, our Insights Manager, who'll take you through some of the processes and the work that we've done, I'd like first to hand over to Gordon Morrison, the Chief Exec of ASVA, who's been extremely helpful, as I say, in helping us to create this resource and pulling together a group there. Gordon, would you like to say a few words?
Thanks very much indeed, Denise, and good morning, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, Gordon Morrison, Chief Executive of the Association of Scottish Visitor Attractions, ASVA for short. ASVA, I think most people on this call will know who ASVA are, but if you don't, we are the trade body that represents the attraction sector in Scotland. We do a considerable amount of work in supporting the industry, both in terms of guidance and advice, but also lobbying on behalf of the sector. We've got just over 500 attractions in our membership. I think the important point, you've already made it, Denise, and what I was going to say was it's important to emphasise this is not an academic exercise here. This is genuine support for the industry, and I was absolutely delighted that Visit Scotland invited me and ASVA to be involved in this project. Our involvement, our core involvement has been we brought together a group of 10 sector representatives from across the country, very different types of attraction, different locations, different wants, different needs, different stages of their development. And we had a very detailed session, half-day session, detailed discussion about two in particular of the most likely scenarios that we could be facing in the months and year ahead, including quite a challenging session about potentially looking at a 5 winter scenario, for example. I think what was really interesting for me was that not only did the group clearly articulate the challenges and opportunities that each one of them were looking at in terms of the planning, but also there was a huge degree, and I think Chris you'd agree with this, a huge degree of commonality actually across the group, regardless of whether we were hearing from a city centre walking tour or an industrial museum, or indeed even an Iron Age crannog. You know, there was a lot of commonality there across the group, and that then meant that the outputs of the workshop were able to be pulled together into this session today. It was really valuable though to be involved in that. I was really grateful to be involved in that, and I'd just like to say, Denise, that we're delighted to still be involved in this just now, and delighted to be in this session today. I don't think there's much else that I need to say. I think you covered it off very succinctly, Denise, so I won't ramble on. They're not here to hear from me today, so thanks very much.
Okay, thanks very much, Gordon. And without further ado then, I will hand over to Chris Greenwood, Insights Manager at Visit Scotland, to walk you through this piece of work.
That's great. Thank you, Denise. Thank you, Gordon. So, my name is Chris Greenwood. I'm one of the Insight Managers at Visit Scotland. And what we were trying to do with the workshops, as has been mentioned before, is translate the exercise of scenario planning into a practical toolkit that will allow businesses to think more strategically. Where we are at the moment is quite an interesting and quite a challenging time From a National Tourist Board perspective, and this is affecting a number of other government and public sector bodies, is that the measures of performance that we've relied on in the past have been disrupted. You may be aware of things like the Office of National Statistics International Passenger Survey. That's a face-to-face interview that is taken with international inbound visitors, usually at places like airports and seaports, and naturally, for safety concerns of both the interviewer and interviewee, those surveys have been suspended. So that, along with the domestic monitors, the measure of GB residents overnight stays, we've lost the quantitative measures of tourism performance, the volume and value of where people go. So we've had to rely on alternative measures that perhaps we haven't utilized as much in the past, because we've had these robust, long-running, large sample surveys of tourism performance, and we've moved towards more kind of consumer sentiment surveys and things like scenario planning. Now, because we don't have the quantitative measures, being able to provide forecasts and projections of tourism performance and sort of predictions of when things are going to restart, we don't have that foundation. So scenario planning is a useful tool in times of uncertainty, of being able to test ideas, strategies and scenarios to see if they're applicable in sort of different worlds, different occurrences. We'll come on and I'll explain the role of scenario planning just now. So scenario planning, what it is it's a series of snapshots of kind of different possible futures. What you do is you examine your system. It could be your business, it could be the tourism sector. It's the tourism sector in this way. And what we did was we look at what are the key variables that are going to influence tourism behavior or the tourism sector at this particular point in time. Now, taking those variables and also identifying a series of assumptions and uncertainties, and amongst those it could be things like the impact of the vaccine rollout, or it could be the duration or the impact of a tier system on behavior, those kinds of things. We can build a series of scenarios from which a strategy can then be developed. Now, it should be clear that the objective isn't to reach a specific scenario, find one scenario that we like and aim towards that. What you should have is you should have your business's goals or aspirations or strategy, and then test your strategy based on what you want to achieve, what your objectives are, against all the scenarios, and then decide, how do I need to adapt my strategy should this particular scenario start to develop? Is my scenario fit for purpose? Will I still achieve my goals, and how will I do it? Or do I need to alter what my goals are in light of this strategy? And then if this scenario starts to develop, you've got that agility, you've got that resilience within your business to be able to respond quickly, because you can see the indicators that are suggesting that scenario is developing. As I said, the scenarios aren't there to predict the future. They're there to identify a range of possible futures that then allow you to develop your strategy accordingly. We have a toolkit on VisitScotland.org, which will allow us that has all the different scenarios in, and can lead a business through a kind of series of exercises which will allow you to then apply those to your strategy and your development. Now, the strategies, the scenarios that we developed were for the Scottish Tourism Emergency Response Group, which is a series of public bodies which includes the enterprise agencies, Visit Scotland, COSLA, Scottish Government, and the tourism industry is represented by the Scottish Tourism Alliance, and they act as a consulting group for the Scottish Government. So when we were looking at the rollout of the grant funding, it was part of the STERG strategy that identified what the requirements were that influenced the Scottish Government in defining what the grants were, and then to come back to consult on how to distribute those funds. That's only one example that the STERG group has been involved from March of last year on a number of exercises, and you may have been involved in some of their industry surveys. Anyway, the scenarios that we developed for them was to cover an 18-month period from July of 2020 take us through to the end of this year, and it was really a short-term period to look at how we can get the industry restarted and start to recover and redevelop. There are subsequent scenarios that were developed by the Scottish Government and Scottish Enterprise, which take us up to 2030, and the Scottish Tourism Alliance commissioned industry-led surveys that took to 2025. Our scenarios really were just looking at how to test the STERG recovery strategy, you know, to get the industry back into that recovery mode. Obviously, with the subsequent lockdowns, both within the tier system and the national lockdown we're in at the moment, this is kind of altering our timelines, but the scenarios still remain valid, certainly until the end of this year and into the beginning of next year, when, you know, we get back to, shall we say, whatever the next normal will be. The two variables that we identified as being key to understanding the scenario, to understanding tourism at the moment, were whether consumers were able to travel or not travel, and that could be because for some sectors they could be self-isolating, or they don't feel confident in traveling, or it could be something to do with household income, or they're very confident in traveling. So, you know, there's that ability to travel, you know, there's no barriers, either they're confident or they feel some normalcy in control and being able to travel. There was no restrictions on them being able to move around. The other one was industry operating environment. Either businesses can operate or they can't operate. You know, it's one of those, and it could be because businesses are in an area of lockdown, or it could be that there are very restrictive operating requirements. If you think of having a maximum cap on the number of people that you can have within a property, you know, being able to ensure that physical distancing regulations are being held. So those were the variables that we had, and we had 5 scenarios that came out of those. As Gordon said, we concentrated on 2 in the workshops that we conducted, and this was firstly for the convenience of time, but also the 2 scenarios were the 2 that we felt were most relevant at this particular point. The first one was scenario 1, which was our baseline scenario. And that was a scenario that interpreted what tourism looked when it restarted following the lockdown in July 2020. And it's our assumption of what the recovery and the restarting of tourism will be this time around, whether that is at Easter, or whether it's in May, or whether it's later, depending on what the science tells us in terms of you know, the situation that we're in. But we're expecting it's going to be a tiered recovery and a phased recovery with various sectors opening up as we're going along. We're also assuming that whilst there is the vaccine rollout, there will still be requirements for possibly physical distancing, you know, cleansing regimes, all those kinds of things. And we're also assuming that it's going to start off with a very hyper-local market, you know, people within your own local authority area, then stretching out to being possibly the Scottish domestic tourism market, Scottish residents within Scotland, then the rest of the UK, and then at some point in the future, the international market. But obviously that is a very sort of blunt approach, and there could be various other variations around that that may manifest themselves as we're going along. But we're assuming that would form the majority of visitors as they recover. The other scenario was scenario 5, and that was really our worst case. 5 Winters, ironically, became one that, as a title, was one that we came to regret, because obviously places like the Cairngorms are seeing some of the best snow and skiing conditions that they've seen for many years. So for them, 5 Winters would be fantastic. However, what 5 Winters represents is 3 to 5 quarters of low season performance. If you think Q4 of last year and Q1 of this year would represent that very low kind of turnover, certainly at the moment, where there's absolutely no trading going on. But imagine that carrying on into Q2, Q3, and Q4 of this year. You know, even if there was like limited sort of ability to trade, what is the impact of that on the tourism sector and your sector individually? You know, what are the consequences of that? There were other scenarios that we looked at. One was one we called the old normal, and that essentially that Scottish tourism pre-pandemic, what it was like in 2019 and before. We had doors open, which is where businesses are allowed to trade, but there is a restriction on access to markets. And if you think of Highland and Borders tourism businesses during sort of autumn of last year, so the Central Belt, you know, Glasgow and Edinburgh, people weren't allowed to travel outside of those areas, but Highland businesses were still able to trade. Therefore, they weren't eligible for possible support at that particular time. So how do you respond in that situation? You know, how do you access maybe the local market to come to your property when you know, like the main markets of Glasgow and Edinburgh, the volume markets, are unavailable at that particular time? The other one was scenario 4, the long chill. And this is one where there are strict regulations on tourism businesses. So there's a pent-up demand within the consumer to want to travel, but there may be restrictions. And we're thinking that would be something similar to a tourism business within the Central Belt during that tiered system. So they may be able to trade, but in a very restrictive way. They might not be able to open as, say, a visitor attraction, but they might be able to capitalize on other assets that they've got, such as you know, catering, being able to provide, you know, sort of takeaways and things like that. Anyway, if we, when we did the workshop and we looked at all of those the scenarios, we went through a series of exercises. We did a SWOT analysis, looking at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats within the sector. And then we looked at the implications on those on key elements of the visitor attraction sector, namely customers, products, suppliers, and staff. And then we took all that information and started looking at what are the key imperatives within the sector in terms of what needs to continue to be done, what do we need to ramp up and increase in terms of activity, and finally, what are the big ideas? So we started off by doing a SWOT analysis, you know, looking at the internal and external factors that are impacting the visitor attraction sector itself. Looking and there was a fantastic, very rich list of elements that were brought in by the people within the workshop. I've summarized all the information that we had and brought it down to these kind of summarized bullet points. Certainly there is a much longer list, and we're producing some collateral that we're going to be publishing on VisitScotland.org to accompany the toolkit that people will be able to look at and see this broader range. But you can see here that the key strengths for the visitor attraction sector, we're seeing that firstly, and this was supported by other workshops we did with other sectors such as self-catering and the holiday park sector. The visitor attraction sector is seen as the foundation of the tourism sector within Scotland, and certainly many other sectors are determining their strategies based on the availability of visitor attractions and whether they're open and trading to determine what they're going to be doing. In terms of you know, the sector, I think it's widely accepted is flexible and diverse. It's geographically spread across the whole of Scotland, you know, from urban to rural to island. There's a range of sizes from you know, very large operators through to very small and dare I say it, kind of very niche sort of providers as well. It also takes into account possibly people that are seen as a visitor attraction, but their core business and maybe something else, such as the distilleries sector. So, you know, it's very flexible and diverse. It's also market agnostic in terms of, you know, you don't open specifically for the international market, which maybe a tour operator will do, but you're open to everybody from the very local market through to the international market. And whilst you may focus on one particular area, you know, you are available to everybody. But also, you're also the custodians of heritage and culture, and we know that heritage and culture, along with landscape, are the key drivers that identify Scotland, you know, and make it popular with visitors and wants to come here. So, you know, there is a role that's played in supporting the wider tourism sector. The opportunities that come from that are you know, the possibility of collaboration through product creation. So, you know, being able to work with other sectors, and I think there'll be an open door in being able to work with, you know, sort of local suppliers, other tourism businesses to coordinate in recovery strategies at a local level. Technology adoption, you know, I think a lot of people have talked about, you know, the role of online booking to be able to determine load factors and revenue management. But there's also, you know, the role that virtual reality and augmented reality has had at the moment to provide inspirational content to you know, at this time, so people can do virtual tours of properties, which, you know, can be premiumized, and you can charge for those opportunities. But many have been provided for free, especially as there's this pent-up demand within the consumer. Local product, you know, because you're embedded within the local community, you know, it's about reinforcing local experiences. So, you know, the local community, whilst it may not traditionally have sort of provided patronage to visitor attractions in the past, I think it is seen as a key asset for people that there is visitor attractions on their doorstep. And certainly, whilst the mindset is changing at the moment, whilst we're kind of looking more at the local area, you know, you are a key asset for the local community in a sense of pride, which can be returned. And then there's also the role that the local sort of people have. So we talked about local artisans, you know, the promotion of local products, both craft and food and drink. And then there's the community. There's that ownership that we had. That you know, you're sending a message out to visitors and locals that, you know, we can talk about the role that sustainability has, history, culture, heritage, those kinds of things. On the weaknesses side, I think the key one that many people will have would be the continuation of fixed costs during lockdown and the overheads, and people having to find that those overheads, you know, are sort of like a burden on being able to continue, and certainly would determine reopening strategies. You've got complex staffing models, the role that seasonal staff have, the role of volunteers, the fact that you may have staff that are shielding or that have, sort of like personal circumstances, like having to provide, homeschooling and things like that. But it's common across other sectors, but is possibly more acute within staffing models. You also have the requirement of possibly very specialised experienced staff, and if they're currently furloughed, the retention of those can provide some challenges. And as I said before, there's the re-engagement of local customers. That kind of maybe mislaid perception of people may go to their local visitor attraction once and then say, well, I don't need to go back, I've already been. How do you kind of get that re-engagement of local customers over time? And the threats, the external ones, is agility. And one of the things that came out was the ratio of public sector to private enterprise, and the suggestion that the public sector might not be as agile at being able to roll out new concepts, new ideas, new innovations compared to the private sector. But the private sector might not have that level of capital that the public sector has. There was also a lot of talk about the role of local authorities and local authority ownership, and whether local authorities would see visitor attractions as a key asset to keep open should budgets change, and that led to some interesting conversations. Quality and consistency. Quality is obviously a cornerstone of the visitor attraction sector, but is their ability to maintain that consistency under the regulations that are coming in during COVID recovery. And public confidence in indoor spaces. We talk about sort of minimal space and having restricted number of visitors that are coming in. Do the public feel confident? Are your kind of cleansing regimes, whilst they're very robust, is there a belief and a communication that those are in place? So we took that strategy, the SWOT analysis, and we kind of turned it around and started looking at the relationships between how can we take the strengths and the opportunities and maximize the opportunities from the strengths, but at the same time minimize the weaknesses and diminish the threats by utilizing, by identifying them and then sort of trading those off against the strengths and opportunities. The outcome of those is shown here. So how did we capitalize on the strengths? Again, through the exercise that we did, where we're looking at the implications on customers and product and so on, we came up with this. So maximizing the opportunities from the strengths. Well, there was the technology adoption, the rollout of contactless to provide that sort of reassurance, but also provide you with the metrics of how many sort of bookings are you having, and when are the quiet spots, and how could you maybe have dynamic pricing or ticketing that would allow people to come through. The role of local suppliers to increase authenticity. So there is a big movement amongst consumers at the moment that they want personalized experiences. They don't want to feel as though they're going to something generic. They want to feel as though they're going to a destination that is unique and represents the place that they're in. So there's huge opportunities to support local suppliers, both in terms of artisans, in craft work, but also in food and drink as well. And this is seen within the Visit Scotland Eye Centre sort of purchasing, where we focus on local produce and promote that through our sort of retail outlets. I mentioned about enhancing storytelling through the staff. It's hugely experienced staff who know the products, and they can be personalities, and people are attracted to that, and it can enhance the product that you're having. We mentioned, and this was something that came through, was the big increase in people owning dogs and traveling with dogs, particularly as we had a concentration on the domestic market. It's affectionately referred to as the hound pound, And Booking.com recently published some analysis where identification of dog-friendly accommodation and visitor attractions was I think the second or third sort of biggest element of the search. So, you know, is your visitor attraction dog-friendly? You know, do you promote that? And you know, if people are out, do they feel that they can come in with their dog? Obviously, it may be something that isn't practical for your particular property, but being able to identify that would certainly support your product in terms of, you know, the variety of channels people use. We talk about personalization and premiumization as well, and you know, at the moment, you know, so with virtual tours, if there is unique opportunities, those can be premiumized, and you can charge for those. But people like to think they're getting something different and unique, and if you've got you know, the ability to provide personalized tours or exclusive behind the scenes tours, those can add to you know, generating additional revenue, certainly putting through those. And then of course there's all the things that you're doing at the moment through innovation. You know, there's the education packages that many people are putting out at the moment for people who are homeschooling. There's catering opportunities, you know, the opening for takeaway, and there's a utilization of outdoor space. So, you know, if you've got gardens and grounds, you know, opening those for people exercising, but they might not be able to use the indoor space. We can also see, in terms of minimizing the threats that were identified, diversing distribution channels, looking, you know, making sure that your website is up to date, tapping into local initiatives. For example, the 5 Food initiative that would, you know, might not be something that people would have thought about initially, but you know, thinking outside the box and bringing in that level of kind of a collaboration that's out there. But many people have been moving towards community crowdsourcing and fundraising, and certainly, as I said, there's that belief that visitor attractions are kind of part of the soul of a local community. So, you know, it is the possibility of alternative revenue generation at this particular time, and also would tie back to that kind of membership packages where people feel like they're a kind of owner of the product as well. We look at limiting the weaknesses. You know, again, we can sort of look at, you know, make sure that you can maintain good communication with your customers. You know, there's some fantastic, engaging, inspirational content that's on social media at the moment that's coming out. You know, it's keeping your product front of mind, and it's almost as though being able to maintain that sort of level of information. We're not open now, but we're still here. And we still care, and that relates through to making sure that the basic information on your website is updated. So if you are still closed, that's you know, that's you know, front and center. But also that if you have online retail, for example, that is available to people as well, and clear on the website. Talked about like the role that maybe hyper-local visitors, so you know, people within your local area or local authority area, may be the first markets that are available. How do you engage with them to make them come back and return on a regular basis? Possibly a diversification into maybe some short-lived exhibitions that focus on the local community, if that's appropriate. You know, and things that are associated that you know, people will know that if they come back, you know, maybe every few weeks, that there will be something different for them. Now, it could be that you could look at the catering option, or it could be that you look at, you know, so like I said, these kind of focused, short-lived exhibitions that are specific to the local market, that, you know, would change once a broader market, you know, the Scottish domestic market or UK domestic market would then come in, so that you could revert back to maybe the model that worked for you before. Diversification, you know, capitalize on your asset. If you've got fantastic catering, then you know, sort of you be able to utilize that. But also, there was a lot of coverage around flexible workspaces. You know, if you've got exhibition space, can you rent that out to you know, sort of artisans, you know, sort of craft artists, which of course would then make for an interesting relationship of having something maybe different that people will be able to see, but also provides these people with a space to work and operate as well. There was also people who, sort of businesses that are outside of the visitor attraction sector that would provide business and working space. So, you know, if you've got really good Wi-Fi and broadband, you know, can you rent out sort of workspace within your property that people could come and work and have that sort of place away from home that maybe be more inspiring for them. We talk about you know, sort of like, you know, making sure that the you know, sort of cleaning regime, certification, people are confident that everything's doing, again, is front and center, that's in people's minds, that your property is ready to go and is safe. I know that Gordon has said on many occasions that you know, the visitor attractions has been one of the safest sectors, you know, during this time, and that you know, it's a testament to the hard work of the attractions that they've been able to adapt to all the changing regulations. We also talk about you know, being able to communicate with staff, understand what their barriers to work are. Are there people that are homeschooling? Are there people who are shielding? You know, are the volunteers feeling as though they're able to return at this particular point in time? So, you know, maintaining regular communication with staff is important. There was also talk about you know, being able to tap into other sectors, the tourism sector. So if there are hotels or you know, hospitality businesses that are unfortunately having to you know, not able to retain, say, catering staff, are you aware of that, and is that an opportunity that you might be able to take on, that you'd be able to bring that person in if that's within your model? But we're also aware of the sensitivity around the community as well, and we know for some communities there were concerns about the reopening of tourism and bringing in of tourists and travellers. So, you know, making sure that you're communicating with the local community as well about, you know, what you're preparing to do and how that's being done, which will also promote your product to that local market to bring them in as well. Same goes with suppliers, you know, and we know that certainly for services being able to reopen, there may be, for example, if you need something as simple as electrical testing, you know, the electrical companies that do that may have furloughed staff and therefore don't have the volume of people to roll out at a moment's notice. You know, keep in touch with your suppliers and be aware of the restrictions that they have in terms of delivery times, and do you have alternative sort of plans in place should there be any disruption that takes array around that. But I think key to all of this is developing your strategies so that you've got a framework and a template for reopening. And this is where, you know, when you have your strategy, test it against the scenarios so that you can then develop those accordingly. When we kind of took all of that together, there were a couple of case studies that came out as being quite sort of, you know, relevant at this particular point in time. And I refer you to the role of the National Galleries at the moment. This is one of their pin tweets that they had on. Right, and they're saying there front and center, you know, their galleries are closed until further notice, but they're still there on social media, their website, YouTube, they're there day and night, and they're there, and I think the key words there are providing diversion and inspiration during this difficult time. So, you know, there's that connection with their audience, making sure they're front of mind, and you know, having that really diverse range of educational content, virtual tours, and they've also got sort of lectures in there as well that you can sign on to through things like Zoom, which is again engaging with people. The other one that I quite liked was the Black Watch Museum. There they've got their lockdown update, but they're very sort of clear that whilst they are closed at the moment, you know, they've got their online gift shop, and also the cafe is available for takeaway, and they're capitalising on their position next to the river, where there are a lot of walkers exercising at the moment, and therefore you know, sort of bringing in the local market to sort of you know, continue to provide you know, valuable revenue, but also to show that they're still there providing the quality product that people are relying on. Other areas that we looked at, we could have gone down and referred to the technology and the role that virtual reality has taken. Faroe Islands, for example, you can get a local with a webcam to take you on a walking tour, you know, things like that. But realise that the investment that's required at this particular point might be difficult, but there are those opportunities. You know, if you've got, say, for example, you're an animal park, or you know, you've got adoption sort of programs for animals. You know, having the webcam, you know, provides that greater engagement and allows people to feel a greater connection when they want to go through that possible adoption process. So there's that. And the other one was the role that Amazon Explore has as a potential platform for promoting, you know, these initiatives that you're taking on. You know, things from cookery demos to walks, to tours, things like that. You know, that there are platforms out there that people can utilize to you know, share some of the innovation that they've got. Anyway, to bring all of this together before we get on to the Q&A, I think, as I said, we're expecting the reopening to be hyper-local, followed by the Scottish domestic market within Scotland, rest of UK international, but that could be nuanced as new rules and regulations come in. Possibly there'll be a tiered system, so there could be localised lockdowns and things like that. Strengths and opportunities for the attraction sector are based around agility and adaptability, but familiarity as well, particularly for the local audience and more broadly in quality. Whereas the weaknesses and threats can be minimized through being more confident, innovative, and flexible. So, you know, the sector is, you know, stronger in collaboration, and many of the other sectors look to the visitor attractions to determine their strategies as well. And there's also its prominence within the local community, and being able to communicate with your customers, suppliers, staff, and colleagues is so important in terms of, you know, just highlighting where you are and the strategies that you're going to be rolling out, and also the ideas that they may bring back to you. We understand that the visitor attractions are facing a challenging financial situation. However, they are the soul and foundation of the sector, and many others are determined by your plans. So I think you're in a fantastic position for when recovery does occur, that being able to work with other sectors in terms of accommodation, activities, and hospitality, you would find that you would be able to coordinate possibly at a local level, you know, working with your DMO to position yourself there. But really, it's down to how are you going to plan, prepare, position to respond to the future. And we hope that, you know, the toolkit and scenarios and the outcomes of the workshops would be able to support you in and around that. I'm now going to hand over to Denise, and I think we've got time for a few questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. We do have some time for questions. My colleagues can confirm, but I think at the moment there are no questions posed. So if anybody out there has got either a burning question that you'd like to just type in using that tab at the top right-hand side there under questions, please do that. That's great. We'd be more than happy to take your questions. Or for that matter, if the presentation by Chris there today has spurred any thoughts, any comments, just any input that anybody would like to make, we'd be delighted to have that too. While we wait for that to happen, then I would just say, you know, thanks again to Chris. I think you've done a great job there, Chris, in summarising those strengths, particularly as well as the challenges for the sector. As Gordon said earlier on, there was an enormous amount of input that we got from the group that we work with, which was enormously helpful. We've shared some of that today, but our next steps will be to pull together this material, this presentation, but also some of the other materials, the SWOT analysis that we created there, to make of them what I'm calling companion pieces to sit alongside the toolkit on the VisitScotland.org website, so that you, as members of the visitor attraction and experiences sector, you go on to VisitScotland.org in the next days, you'll find not only the toolkit itself with all of the prompts that are in there, but also then some dedicated sector-specific companion pieces that will hopefully be helpful to you as you sit down to work through that. Couple of questions coming in. When do we think that we should be planning to open in some form a self-catering or activity orientated business? I take it that means a business that has that focus. Chris, any thoughts from your side on what is the most likely scenario then? To overuse the word scenario, but when might we be seeing a reopening for businesses this spring, summer?
Yeah, I mean, I think any kind of prediction is caveated around the development of, you know, the way that the virus is developing at the moment, and you know, whilst many people are holding off. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to evade the question, but I mean, broadly, there is an understanding that, you know, should cases start to kind of decline, there'll be an easing of sort of conditions, probably more towards kind of post-Easter and that area. But I suspect that it will be that kind of localized market. And we're talking about, when we talk about the hyper-local, the model there is generally within your local authority area. Now, for somewhere like the Highlands, obviously you've got a large rural area, but quite disparate population, but sort of travel within that is possible. But then, you know, somewhere like Clackmannanshire, which is obviously a very small sort of local authority area, there's a different role of challenge. But, you know, we're talking about people sort of staying within the same local authority area. So, you know, it's not necessarily, you know, focusing on people within your own kind of town, although that is the ideal. It could be people traveling, you know, some distance from the surrounding area. But yeah, I mean, I think we're talking sort of maybe Easter, May time, with the subsequent rolling out towards the Scottish domestic population. Talk about international markets returning. Denise, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that, but airlines are looking, you know, any time into 2022 through to 2024 before some kind of return to levels we saw pre-pandemic. But there's so many unknowns.
Yeah, I think that's right, particularly for the international markets there, Chris. The now enforced hotel quarantine that we have in Scotland will for sure have further impact on the network of flights that we have, which at the moment we're you know, it is vastly reduced and even smaller than it was last March, April time. We know, because we're working all the time with the route planners at the airlines, that there is, you know, enormous intention still there to return. So watch this space. People like the most proactive, the likes of the Ryanairs and the EasyJets will be quicker to do this, but so too will those who are feeding international hubs. So watch this space for KLM coming back as soon as they think they are able to do, for instance. But for now, the quarantine is going to have a massive impact on that. So I think for this year, we're talking, as you say, hyper local, we're talking Scottish market, and let's hope that through the summertime we will be seeing rest of UK market as well. There's a question there around have we done this exercise for other subsectors, and the answer is yes. At the time that we were inviting in the input from other groups, among those that we worked with were the likes of the ASSC for self-catering, the BH and HPA for the camping and caravanning sector, and Wild Scotland and representatives of the outdoor, active, adventure and wildlife tour operators were among the ones that we have done. We may yet do some further ones, and just as I've said for this sector, we will pop up those special sector-specific resources up onto .org as and when we have those as well. I'm conscious of time, so I think at this point I'll just very quickly again thank Chris for your sharing this morning. Chris, I think that's been hopefully really helpful. I think, as we said earlier, scenario work doesn't predict the future, but it does help us to decide, importantly, what it is that we need to do now in order to shape it for ourselves. So I hope that everybody watching has felt inspired and will go away and download the Scenario Planning Toolkit and either have a go on your own or together with some members of your team at working through that to see what your own response to the potential scenarios might be, basing that on your business and your experience as well in the environment that you are working in. So thank you very much everyone for your time this morning.